everyone. Today I am broadcasting live. Somewhere, if I move around, you'll get to see the full moon. I'm at my sister's house, and she has three little kids. By the way, my niece did my makeup today, so I hope it's now you see it. You see the beautiful full moon. Yeah, I'm broadcasting live from Connecticut. I actually think Connecticut may be a worse state than Florida, just because it gave us both of the Bushes, and it's just as devoid of culture as Florida, and it has people just as disgusting as Florida. So, except it does not have the. Does Connecticut have all the disgusting people from around the world? I don't know, but we should put that up as a poll today. We'll put that up later. Which state's more disgusting, Connecticut or Florida? It's a tie, I think. Because Connecticut has a lot of race. Like, there's a town called Darien, Connecticut, which was what you call a sundown town. Speaking of sundown towns, the guy who he did not write sundown. The guy who wrote Lies, my teacher told me, James Lovin, he died yesterday. May God bless his soul for exposing a lot of Americans to just all the propaganda that the teachers tell you. Like, he was very good, so we'll miss him, and we should do a special about him eventually. Like, I did about 2 years ago send an email when the podcast was just starting, but he ignored my pod email, so c'est la vie. What are we gonna do? Yeah, and it looks like something happened in Afghanistan. The first thing that all the analysts are like lying to you about is, oh my God, we did not foresee this. But that's a lie, because what Afghanistan was a whole bunch of, it was like warlords dividing the country amongst themselves, and they were treating the soldiers very badly. So apparently, believe it or not, people don't want to fight over a warlord's turf once the gravy train's gone. That was expected. What was not expected was the U.S. not leaving a presence. It's like, it's very hard to get the U.S. to leave a country fully. Nearly impossible once they establish their grubby little hands on it. Like Japan, they've been trying for decades now to get rid of the U.S. and they haven't been able to. Well, Japan, South Korea, they've been trying for decades. So I don't actually, I mean, Vietnam, they were forced out, but I don't understand what happened here, to be honest. And Iraq too, they've like tried for decades to get them out. So I don't know what happened here either. So I just say observe and fight back against imperial propaganda. So Washington, believe it or not, there is one group of people who are actually more disgusting than what the Taliban was in the 1990s, and that was the warlords. They would kidnap girls and do mass rape, and they had these child molestation, like they were like Pizzagate, but it was disgusting. It was called Bachabazi or something like that, like some kind of pedophilia ring. The Taliban kind of busted that, so there was like a moderate improvement. But they had one of the warlords' failson write an editorial in Washington Post, and I'm like, wait a minute, why are you letting warlords failson? At least get a warlord. There are enough warlords to write editorials. Like, why you get his failson? I don't get it. Yeah, I'm coming through. Yeah. Okay, so Nadia asks, let's see, do we have any questions? Good evening, everyone. Good evening, John, Snoopy, Nadia, Janet, and Aeolus. This is great to see you guys here. Today, yeah, my niece, okay, well, it is kind of dark, but it's kind of fun. Let's see, the weather's great. I heard, by the way, there may be a hurricane soon. And if there is a hurricane, well, Janet will continue the stream, and then I guess we'll figure this out if I lose my power. let's see, what else is there today? Oh yeah, Angelina Jolie is suddenly caring about girls again, which she did not for the past 20 years or something. I mean, she is like one of the most despicable people on earth. She was directing a movie about this Cambodian girl, and she made this war orphan from Cambodia cry as a part of the audition. I just don't have a good opinion on her. So that's about it. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand and learn and figure out who to interview for Afghanistan. Somebody gave me this recommendation of this professor from Kabul, and I will see if he can come on. Yes, I can do this show inside if there's a hurricane, but it's not going to come. If there's a hurricane, it's probably not coming till midnight. So for another 2 hours, by then the kiddos will be asleep. So then you guys won't be hearing something like My Little Pony, Peppa, Peppa, My Little Pony. Oh, My Little Pony is actually like really hard to get a grasp for grown-ups because there's like so many characters. Peppa's really easy because you have Peppa, George. But yeah, I'm still trying to learn all the My Little Pony stuff because that's what my niece likes. And with that, we interviewed Sebastian from Argentina. He has a lot of cool things to say. We spoke about Diego Maradona, the golden goal, the everything, and it was a great thing, a great time. By the way, Hassan Piker, Jenk's nephew. Whew. Okay, I don't even care if he has a $4 million house or a $2 million house or whatever, but I do care if he has not read Marx and is trying to push Bernsteinism about like slow reform, and if he which is really irritating. Yeah, we speak about Diego Maradona and how he was awesome. He was amazing. And yeah, everyone was like, it's kind of funny because he's a big beating England is always going to make you a superstar because nobody likes England. I think this year in the Euros, it was like not that everyone was actually a fan of England as much. I mean, a fan of Italy as much as it is to not like England, which is of course justifiable because England colonizes all the world. Yes, Maradona was based. Yeah, Dragon Nightmare said Maradona was based CC. And I guess please hit like and subscribe. And also go to historically.substack.com/subscribe. Become a paid subscriber. We're going to have lots of articles, lots of like newsletters, lots of podcasts, and lots of fun. So with okay, Dimitri Polekimos says, Diego Maradona said, "In my heart, I am Palestinian." Oh, so sweet. And with that, we shall be back in about, I guess, an hour and a half. And we'll get to Hassan's opportunism when we come back. So with that, have fun. So today we have Sebastian. He lives in Chicago, but he's originally from... No.
I live in Buenos Aires, and I used to live in Chicago.
Oh, sorry. He lives in Buenos Aires, and now he used to live in Chicago, and you're from Argentina?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm already jealous that you're in Buenos Aires. It's one of the cities I've always wanted to visit. So can you tell us a little bit about Buenos Aires? Like, I know that we did an episode about Juan Perón a few years ago, and one of the most iconic scenes I saw was all the, like when he was being forced out, all the people coming to this fountain in Buenos Aires. Let me see if I can find it.
La fuente de Plaza de Mayo?
Sí.
Yes.
So
that is where, if I'm not mistaken, terms, that is where los descamisados, which is kind of like they used to, like the oligarchy used to use that term as a derogatory term, but they kind of like embraced it and repurposed it as kind of like a symbol of the working class.
Yeah. For me, when I interviewed Ernesto Seman about Juan Perón, I was very confused because he has what he created was amazing in that people's like salaries increased by 400% in just like this time, and he did stand up to the West as best as he could, and so it's a very interesting movement he created.
And very heterogeneous too.
Yeah, and of course the other famous Argentine everyone knows and loves is Che.
Yes.
Well, no, I take
yes,
that.
like just to give more context, like the El Partido Justicialista, which is the kind of like what we had after the Peronismo, is kind of like in the 90s was absolutely neoliberal and like full-blown privatization, and there was a Minister of Economy named Cavallo, and he was from the School of Chicago, and basically they set kind of like an exchange, more or less you could say that they kind of like dollarized the currency without switching completely to dollars, because they guaranteed mean? That means that they guaranteed that 1 peso was equal to $1.
Oh.
But to support that,
but then so then people did not have. Oh, I see what happened. So then your salary wouldn't get you things you needed to buy.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say that for a while, the first 2-3 years, the inflation was flattened because you're kind of like bound to the dollar, and inflation in the United States is not that big, and also because the oligarchs and that's what I think. I was very young, but the owners of the big corporations had guaranteed income that was kind of like dollarized, so they could send those funds to the outside the country, and kind of like the how do you say it in English? Es fuga
usted puede decir en español y yo hablo y puedo traducirlo.
It's capital flight.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the term. So what I said is that for a couple of years, maybe 2, 3, 4, it was kind of like a very low inflation that nos llevó a que el ingreso, the income was kind of like a.
Si usted prefiera, yo hablo español muy bueno porque vivía en España. Okay. Si usted prefiere, podemos hablar y yo puedo traducir.
Dale. Entonces, el ingreso per cápita no era muy malo por un tiempo, pero a medida que pasó el tiempo, como pasa siempre con los planes neoliberales, abrieron las importaciones completamente, lo cual hace que sea más barato importar que manufacturar. Entonces, esto hizo que la industria decayera, porque alguien los dueños del capital, es más eficiente para ellos importar bienes y venderlos que fabricarlos cuando tienen que pagar sueldos, cuando tienen que producir, básicamente. Entonces, la economía fue abierta completamente, básicamente, y había cero proteccionismo.
¡Ay, caramba! Es como...
Entonces, para la parte del segundo mandato de Menem, eh, ya las cosas empezaron a dar más mal porque empezó a haber mucho desempleo y para poder financiar, digamos, el gobierno para poder financiarse y para poder mantener el exchange rate.
IMF.
Nosotros todavía ya estábamos en el IMF, en el Fondo Monetario Internacional, pero que por cierto, obviamente siempre te presentan reglas de austeridad y la mar en coche. A ver, ¿dónde estaba? En el segundo mandato de Menem, cuando ya la industria había decaído monstruosamente y empezó a haber mucho desempleo y miseria, el gobierno, para poder financiarse, empezó a privatizar a diestra y siniestra todo. Por ejemplo, privatizaron el petróleo, privatizaron las aerolíneas argentinas, que son una aerolínea de bandera, que no es una empresa privada, es una empresa nacional. Privatizaron aguas argentinas, privatizaron básicamente todo lo que podían privatizar, lo privatizaron.
Ay, hace un año yo escribí un artículo sobre privatización en Bolivia y ellos privatizaron también el agua. Pero en Argentina es el teléfono, sí, qué difícil.
Y otra cosa que hicieron es pasar de un modelo de...
También en Argentina ellos privatizaron sanitación. Ay, no lo sabía.
No, lo que decía es que pasaron también, una cosa que también fue bastante grave, es que pasaron con el argumento de que los fondos de retiro, que en Argentina siempre tuvieron lo que se llama coparticipación solidaria, no me acuerdo el término exacto, pero es algo por el estilo, lo cual quiere decir que lo que yo pago, un porcentaje de mi sueldo que yo deposito ahora, es para financiar a la gente que puso la plata antes. Por eso es solidario. Entonces lo que hicieron es privatizaron eso también. Pasaron a toda la gente a un modelo que es como el 401k de Estados Unidos, en el cual, digamos, y aparte muy poco transparente, lo cual, y lo digo no como si en Estados Unidos fuera muy transparente, que digamos, pero básicamente las AFJP, que son este tipo de empresas que estaban a cargo de los fondos de retiro, usaban ese capital para invertir en la bolsa, pero de una forma muy poco transparente. Entonces, un ejemplo es que Clarín, que sería el equivalente de Fox, Clarín es un diario, Clarín se llama, es un grupo económico que tiene básicamente el monopolio de los medios, porque digamos, hizo también durante los 90 y parte de los 2000 hizo...
¿Es como Rupert Murdoch?
Más o menos, porque es como si vos sumás Rupert Murdoch y el grupo Sinclair.
Es más...
Porque fueron y compraron un montón de estaciones y canales de cable del interior del país. Entonces es como que ellos controlan hasta cierto punto, porque también hay algunas leyes que no las pueden obviar, pero controlan hasta cierto punto qué se transmite en cada lugar del país.
Wow.
Es como, viste el grupo Sinclair, que tienen estos, digamos, noticias locales y hacen como una especie de sindicación de noticias nacionales, pero son todas con una orientación ideológica específica que ellos deciden. Entonces es como que ellos manejan el mensaje en casi todo el país, si quieren.
Ay, Dios. Ay, qué terrible. Y ahora entiendo por qué en 1986 Diego Maradona han patado el gol mágico. Janet, can you show y ahora entiendo por qué la gente argentina ama a Diego, porque es un momento muy grave y muy serio por el país y eso se daba un poquito luz.
Sí, bueno, igual.
Janet, can you play the clip?
En el 86 todavía estaba Ricardo Alfonsín, que fue el primer presidente después de la
Operación Cóndor.
Claro, después del último golpe de Estado.
The second one. Yeah. Let me just quickly translate it for you, Janet. At the end, the commentator says, I want to cry. And then he says, thank you for the tears. Thank you, God, for the football, for Argentina, and for those tears. Este año, Diego Maradona se murió. Muy triste.
Sí, igual por ahí la gente del exterior no lo ve, pero Maradona es querido por mucho más que por su talento futbolístico. Él siempre estuvo del lado del pueblo. Hay videos cuando él era muy jovencito, tipo 20 años, cuando ya empezó a ganar plata. Él era de una villa miseria, de un slum, y le están haciendo una entrevista y él le dice al periodista, muy jovencito, cuando empieza a ganar plata, que uno dice, es el típico momento en el cual uno se puede obnubilar con la riqueza y olvidarse de dónde vino. Y él decía que hablaba sobre la redistribución de la riqueza y que no podía ser que gente pasara hambre cuando otra gente tiene tanto. Siempre, más allá de que vivió en la riqueza porque se lo merece, porque trabajó, siempre estuvo del lado del pueblo, siempre. Entonces por eso la gente lo quiere tanto. No es, digamos, sí, hizo que ganáramos un mundial. También ese gol que hizo es espectacular, pero es muy simbólico. Más allá del talento y la hermosura del juego, es muy simbólico porque eso era Inglaterra. Y en el 82 nosotros tuvimos la guerra, en las cuales, nos robaron hace mucho las Malvinas.
Sí.
Pero era como, viste, imponérsele al opresor imperialista. Más aún el siguiente gol, que es con la mano, y nadie lo vio nunca.
El Dios, la
mano de Dios. La mano de Dios.
Pero a mí no me importa porque las Inglaterras nos roban de Pakistán. Claro. Y yo escribí un artículo sobre Islas Malvadas. Janet va a mandar a usted. Ok. Y eso no es, porque a mí me odio que Ronaldo de Silva, él viene del favela de Brasil, pero él anima por Bolsonaro. Él siempre ha dimenticado dónde viene él. Porque si Bolsonaro fuera el presidente cuando Ronaldo de Silva hubiese jóvenes, es posible que seguro lo mataría. Pero Diego Maradona siempre recordaba su casa y donde...
Y va más allá de eso. No solo eso, si él fue uno de los mayores propulsores de que los jugadores, los futbolistas, se formaran una unión, porque ellos son los que proporcionan el valor y la FIFA está extrayendo la plusvalía del trabajo de los jugadores. Entonces, por ejemplo, él cuando hubo un mundial, ya en México, se quejó un montón porque decía, ¿por qué tenemos que jugar a la 1 del mediodía con 40 grados cuando perfectamente podemos jugar a la noche? ¿Y por qué? Porque Si juegan en otro horario, por ahí hay países del mundo que tienen mucha plata, que quieren pagar por las transmisiones, que no lo van a ver o lo van a ver menos audiencia. Y así un montón de veces. Y fue uno de los que intentó formar una unión de trabajadores del fútbol, básicamente. Y por eso es algo que la FIFA nunca le perdonó y por eso incluso él podría haberse retirado del fútbol y hacer como Pelé, ser un embajador de la FIFA y estar al lado del poder y vivir una vida re tranquilo, seguro, cometiendo excesos, drogándose, borracho, no importa, eso es su vida personal. Y él no, él siempre siguió diciendo que la FIFA era corrupta y que le estaba extrayendo el valor a los jugadores. Entonces, va más allá del talento futbolístico. Era una persona que con todas las limitaciones de educación que pudo tener, veía cosas muy claras.
Ok. Sí, yo, muchas personas, él jugaba por Napoli en
Nápoles,
Italia.
Nápoles.
Sí, y mucha gente en Italia se ama por la misma razón, porque él era una buena persona que tenía mucho compasión sobre el pobre y toda la gente.
Sí, sí.
En India, un momento, espera, por favor. En India también nosotros en Kerala tenemos un estatua de Maradona.
Sí, la he visto.
Ok.
Sí, hay un grupo que es, no sé si decirlo, que, digamos, quizás, a mí me parece que es en broma, pero quizás lo hacen en serio. Parece en broma, pero se llama la Iglesia Maradoniana.
No. Sí, no es broma, es una templo para dar los futbolistas buena suerte. Él representa...
No, te digo acá en Argentina hay gente que se considera de la Iglesia Maradoniana y no es que se organizan y tienen una iglesia, sino que consideran que su Dios es Maradona. Entonces es como que... digamos,
en India es un templo, pero hay...
Mirá, no sabía.
Sí, hay muchos templos. Hay un templo de cricket también, pero es para los jugadores entrar en este tiempo antes de ellos juegan y los daban buena suerte. Hay un estatua de Diego Maradona, pero él no es Dios. Él representa buena suerte.
Sí, ahí te paso el link a la iglesia maradoniana de la que yo hablo, así te queda. Es muy gracioso. So do you want me to read?
Yes, please.
The other political issues raised and distorted by P. Kievsky. Liberation of the colony, we stated in our thesis, means self-determination of nations. Europeans often forget that colonial peoples too are nations.
Yep.
But to tolerate this forgetfulness is to tolerate chauvinism.
Yep. I like that he mentions how Europeans forget that colonial people are nations, and also that people inside colonial nations are people too. There's a lot of racism in Europe. So I feel this. You probably feel this.
It's also, and I say funny as a tongue-in-cheek term, right? But it's funny how they are in favor of self-determination when it's convenient, and when it's not convenient, the people don't have the right to self-determinate.
Exactly. In South America itself, I can give you 10,000 examples, and it drives me mad. But you're absolutely right.
So Pete Kievsky objects. In the pure type of colonies, there is no proletariat in the proper sense of the term. For whom then is the self-determination slogan meant? for the colonial bourgeois, for the fellas. What is fellas?
People.
Oh, okay. I never saw it.
Yeah, it's an old English translate. Yeah, old English term.
Okay. For the peasants, certainly not. It is absurd for socialists to demand self-determination of the colonies. For it is absurd in general to advance the slogans of a workers' party for countries where there are no workers. Pikiewski's anger and his denunciation of our view as absurd, notwithstanding, we make bold to admit that his arguments are erroneous. Only the late and unlamented economists believe that the slogans of a workers' party are issues only for workers. No, the slogans are issued for the whole of the laboring population, for the entire people. The democratic part of our program, Pikiewski has given no thought to his significance in general, is addressed specifically to the people, and that is why in it we speak of the people. The colonial and semi-colonial nations, we said, account for 1,000 million people. And Pikiewski has not taken the trouble to refute that concrete statement. Of the 1,000 million, more than 700 million China, India, Persia, and Egypt live in countries where there are workers.
By workers, I mean factory workers. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. But even with regard to colonial countries where there are no workers, only slave owners. But even with regard to colonial countries where there are no workers, only slave owners. Oh, okay. So he's making the distinction between kind of like, only slave owners and slave. The demand, because like slaves, you could argue that they are workers too, but they are not really.
They're not working for wages; they're owned by
right. Only slave owners and slaves. The demand for etc. The demand for self-determination, far from being absurd, is obligatory hit every Marxist. And he gave the matter a little thought. Pikiewski would probably realize this, and also that self-determination is always advanced for two nations, the oppressed and the oppressing.
Yep.
Yes?
And I like how he mentions in colonialism, that's kind of what happens. I mean, there's the kind where the Europeans came to Africa and shipped many people off, took it into the Americas, or the fact that when the Europeans invaded and enslaved many people in the rest of the world too. So it's good that he mentions the two kinds of relationship right here in the last paragraph, at least.
Another of Pikiewski's objections. Another of Pikiewski's objections. For that reason, we limit ourselves in respect to the colonies to a negative slogan, to demand socialists present to their government get out of the colonies and achievable within the framework of capitalism. This demand serves to intensify the struggle against imperialism, but does not contradict the trend of development. For a socialist society will not possess colonies. The author's inability or reluctance to give the slightest thought to the theoretical content of political slogan is simply amazing. We are to believe that the use of a propaganda phrase instead of a theoretical, precise political term alters matters. To say get out of the colonies is to evade a theoretical analysis and hide behind propaganda phrases. For every one of our party propagandists, in referring to the Ukraine, Poland, Finland, etc., is fully entitled to demand of the Tsarist government, his own government. Get out of Finland, etc. However, the intelligent propagandists will understand that we must not advance either positive or negative slogans for the sole purpose of intensifying the struggle. Only men of the Alexinsky type could insist that the negative slogan, get out of the Black Hundred Duma, was justified by the desire of intensifying the struggle against certain evil. Who is Alexinsky?
He is okay. So he is like a warlord, like somebody. He has a what do you call it? He has he was not a warlord. I'm sorry. Who's not a warlord, Jenna? What is it? What's it called?
Sort of like a feudal lord?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And he would like scream at, like he was a feudal lord, and he would like kind of scream inside the parliament against the even more backwards feudal lords, but he was just good at screaming, but not really doing any actions. So that's what he means. Just somebody who likes to scream.
Okay.
Yeah, it's feudal lord. Sorry, I don't know why I kept on thinking warlord.
Okay. Well, they could also be warlords. Intensification of the struggle is all empty phrases of the subjectivist, who forget the Marxist requirement that every slogan be justified by a precise analysis of economic realities. The political situation and the political significance of the slogan, it is embarrassing to have to drive this home, but what can one do?
I'm gonna save this to like later for when the squad tweets out like defund the police or something. Go ahead.
Right. We know that exists the habit of cutting short the theoretical discussion of a theoretical question by propaganda outcries. It is a bad habit. The slogan "Get out of the colonies" has one and only one political and economic content: freedom of cessation of the colonial nation, freedom to establish a separate state. If, as Pikiewski believes, the general laws of imperialism prevent the self-determination of nations and make it a utopia, illusion, etc., then how can one, without stopping to think, make an exception from these general laws for most of the nations of the world? Obviously, Pikiewski theory is a caricature of the theory. Commodity production in capitalism and the connecting threads of finance capital exist in the vast majority of the colonial countries. How then can we urge the imperialist countries, their governments, to get out of the colonies if, from the standpoint of commodity production, capitalism and imperialism, this is an unscientific and utopian demand, refuted even by Lensch, Kuno, and the rest. I don't know who Lensch, Kuno.
Okay, Lensch, Kuno. Let me figure this out. I don't know either, but I'm figuring this out right now. Just 1 second. My guess is he's probably like some European politician that Lenin doesn't really like. Okay. Yes. Okay. Lensch, Kuno, Hashi, was a group within the German Social Democratic Party.
These are two people, or one person that is called Lensch, Kuno.
Okay. It is Paul Lensch is one person, and Heinrich Kuno is a second person.
Okay.
And and like I said, if you kind of know what happened in Germany, like 1930, you understand that what the German Social Democratic Party did is bad.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
There is not even a shadow of thought in the author's argumentation. He has given no thought to the fact that liberation of the colonies is irrealizable. Only the sense of being irrealizable without a series of revolution. He has given no thought to the fact that it is realizable in conjunction with a socialist revolution of Europe. He has given no thought to the fact that socialist society will not possess not only colonies, but subject nations in general. He has given no thought to the fact that on the question under discussion, there is no economic or political difference between Russia's possession of Poland or Turkestan. He has given no thought to the fact that a socialist society will wish to get out of the colonies only in the sense of granting them the free right to secede, but definitely not in the sense of recommending secession. And for this difference between the right to secede and the recommendation to succeed, Pikiewski condemns us as jugglers or scientifically substantiate. That verdict in the eyes of the worker, he writes, what is a worker to think when he asks a propagandist how the proletariat should regard
Samostinist? Apparently somebody who wants like a free Ukraine, but that's probably a reactionary. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. And get this answer. Socialists are working for the right to secede, but their propaganda is against secession? I believe I can give a fairly accurate reply to that question. Namely, every sensible worker... will think that Kievsky is not capable of speaking.
Yes. Okay.
Every sensible worker will think, here we have Pikievsky telling us worker to shout, get out of the colonies. In other words, we great Russian workers must demand from our government that it get out of Mongolia, Turkestan, Persia. English workers must demand that the English government get out of Egypt, India, Persia. But does this mean that we proletarians wish to separate ourselves from the Egyptian workers and fellas, from the Mongolian, Turkestan, and India workers and peasants? Does it mean that we advise the laboring masses of the colonies to separate from the class-conscious European proletariat? Nothing of the kind. Now, as always, we stand and shall continue to stand for the closest association and merging of the class-conscious workers of the advanced countries with the worker, peasants, and slaves of all the oppressed countries. We have always advised and shall continue to advise all the oppressed classes in all the oppressed countries, the colonies included, not to separate from us, but to form the closest possible ties and merge with us. Yep. That kind of like reminds me of, San Martin and Bolivar wanting to make America an entire country with differences and sub-governments. Like San Martin wanted to make an Inca the president of the, not the president, but the king of the Americas. Like before kind of like democracy was a thing, right?
Oh,
yeah. So he wanted to have the Americas be ruled by an Inca. I don't know if you knew that, but
no, I did not. I was actually not familiar with San Martin the Jose de San Martin until I saw saw this like really nice Venezuelan TV series called Bolivar, and he was really impressive. That like the one scene I do saw is like when they meet in Peru and they both decided that Indians don't pay any taxes because they paid all too much already, and that was very heartwarming. And then I checked it, and it was a real scene. But the sad part was that both of them died before it was liberated. Jose de San Martin died after Bolivar?
It's possible, but he was expatriated to England. He was kind of like, what's the word when you kick out somebody? Exile. He was sort of like exiled to England. And he died in England, and his remains only arrived to Argentina. I think it was, I don't remember the date, but it was certainly after the last coup.
I see. Okay, well, here's my favorite saying by Bolivar. Let's just share this. It's always true. This is what, the United States appears to be destined by providence to plague the rest of the continent with misery in the name of liberty. He said this in 1829. And it's like exactly what they always do.
Totally.
I like how he catches me, misery in the name of liberty. But yeah, I think both Bolivar and Jose de San Martin were like way ahead. They saw what the U.S., like what the cloak of North American imperialism was going to look like. Both of them saw it.
Yeah, and this is much later, but also there are documented quotes of Winston Churchill saying that something must be done about Argentina, because if Argentina can get ahead, it's going to revolutionize all of America, and they will not be stopped.
About a year ago, we interviewed this person who wrote a book about Winston Churchill, and he also I remember he was once complaining about shipping too much meat to South America. It's like, what do those people need meat for? Like he was just a terrible person. But but it makes sense, because what happens is that since you guys are so long and such a big influence, look at how they had to kill Che Guevara, even though he fought for Cuba, is because he was so influential because in order to kind of understand Argentina, you have to understand all of America. And I believe it.
And there are kind of like some alternate sources that said that Fidel sent Che to the rest of America to sort of like get rid of him because they didn't agree totally, and Che wanted kind of like a more revolutionary kind of things, and it was kind of like getting in the way of what Fidel wanted. But I think also the fundamental idea is that they went to the rest of South America because they wanted to complete the work that Bolivar and San Martin did, which is, create we call it the La Patria Grande, which is the bigger nation, if you will.
Exactly. And once you're bigger, if you're bigger, it's hard to kind of divide it so easily, or just come in and destroy everything. And this wasn't a secret. Like, this was out in the open, as in Che left. Okay, so Fidel wanted to concentrate just on Cuba and secure Cuba, but Che left to go to Bolivia and Guatemala on his own, I guess. Like, this was done, like, there's no secret. Like, Che was like, I agreed that Fidel should stay and focus on Cuba, but I will go to these other places and travel and spread the importance. And so I don't think this was a secret at all. Like, they did it openly, and so but to me, let's see if I can find it. Che once came to India too, and it was amazing because, let me show you what makes this so amazing. So he was hugging. So in India, there are different caste members. There's the high caste, medium caste, and low caste. And he went and hugged a low caste member because they were known as untouchables back then.
All right.
And because Che was so influential, he was helping fight caste-based discrimination. So this is Che in India.
That's amazing.
I know. Okay.
I mean, it's more amazing when you know that he came from a very oligarchic family. It's even more like, it makes you admire him even more.
Oh, well, I think, yeah. No, for me, I think it's probably because he saw both sides. Maybe he saw how rich people behaved and how he saw both sides, so that helped maybe. But yeah, it is amazing.
What I'm trying to say is that it would have been much easier to stay in luxury and privilege and just kind of like, say like, oh, poor people, do some charity and take care of the poor, but still kind of like remain in the status and class that you are.
Oh, absolutely. But he gave up everything, and that's
okay.
To me, this part was really touching because it made such a big impact in India for all the people who call themselves, themselves, are treated like Dalit, are treated badly, like Dalits.
Okay, let's continue with the reading. Every sensible worker will think. Here we have Piketty telling us workers to shout, "Get out of the colonies." In other words, we great Russian workers must. We finished this one. The next one. We demand the government. Yes. We demand from our government that they quit the colonies, or to put it in precise political terms rather than in agitational outcries, that they grant the colonies full freedom of succession, the genuine right to self-determination. And we ourselves are sure to implement this right and grant this freedom as soon as we capture power. We demand this from existing governments, and we'll do this when we are the government, not in order to recommend succession, but on the contrary, in order to facilitate and accelerate the democratic association and merging of nations. We shall exert every effort to foster association and merger with the Mongolians, Persians, Indians, Egyptians. We believe that it's our duty and in our interest to do this, for otherwise socialism in Europe will not be secure. We shall endeavor to render these nations more backward and oppressed than we are. Disinterested cultural assistance, to borrow the happy expression of the political social democrats, in other words, we will help them pass to the use of machinery, to the lightening of labor, to democracy, to socialism. If we demand freedom of succession for the Mongolians, Persians, Egyptians, and all other oppressed and unequal nations without exception, we do so not because we favor succession, but only because we stand for free voluntary association and merging up, as distinct from forcible association. That is the only reason. And in this respect, the only difference between the Mongolian or Egyptian peasants and workers and their Polish or Finnish counterpart is, in our view, that the latter are more developed, more experienced politically than the Great Russians, more economically prepared, and for that reason will, in all likelihood, very soon convince their people that it is unwise to extend their present legitimate hatred of the Great Russians. For their role of hangman to the socialist worker and to a socialist Russia, they will convince them that economic expediency and internationalist and democratic instinct and consciousness demand the earliest association of all nations and their merging in a socialist society. And since the Poles and Finns are highly cultured people, they will, in all probability, very soon come to see the correctness of this attitude. And the possible succession of Poland and Finland after the triumph of socialism will therefore be only of short duration. The incomparably less cultured fellows, Mongolians and Persians, might succeed for a longer period, but we shall try to shorten it by disinterested cultural assistance as indicated above.
He was wrong about this, actually, but go on.
Yeah, but this kind of like, have you read the Foundation Asimov trilogy?
No.
Well, I'm not going to go there because I would have to tell you about the entire book, but I think you would find it very interesting.
Okay, I will. But what I'm saying is that just so that people understand him correctly,
yes.
What he's saying is that because Polish and Finnish, like because Russia, it was like a what do you call it? Like a you know how Canada is to America. No, not quite. No, it's more like how Taiwan is to America. You know how it's like a puppet state. Russia was in England's puppet state. So often, like the Tsar.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because the Tsar.
You mean before when the Tsar was in charge?
The Tsar's wife was So the Tsar, Queen Victoria, was related to the Tsar from both the mothers and fathers. So the Tsar's wife was the King of England's sister. And they were married, and so he would like send his troops to say Persia if they're like that's why they're so mad about the Russian Revolution, because let's say that the British needed somebody to colonize Persia. They needed Russia's right next door. That he would send the troops there, and then so what Lenin here is saying is that he knows that that just because the greater Russians were doing bad things when the Tsar's around, after the revolution, Polish and Finnish people probably will understand the problem as to why this happened with the Tsar. So they'll kind of come around quicker than, say, maybe the Persians and the Mongolians, who kind of felt the barrel of our guns. Except the funny thing is, in reality, the opposite happened. Indians, Chinese, Mongolians, Persians, we understood what happened, and Poland and Finland still blame Russia. So it's kind of funny that he was wrong in this one. That's what he was trying to get to.
I really think that you would find the Asimov.
I love sci-fi. Really,
so if we demand freedom of succession for the Mongolians, Persians, Egyptians, and all other oppressed and
hold on.
Yes,
we're on. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I lost track. Go ahead.
Okay. if we demand freedom of secession,
No. We finished the sentence. We're on the there's no difference in our attitude. That's where we are. There's no difference in our attitude to the Poles, Mongolians.
There is okay. Yeah, I got lost. There is no difference in our attitude to the Poles and Mongolians, nor can there be. There is no contradiction, nor can there be, between our propaganda of freedom of secession and our firm resolve to implement that freedom when we are the government, and our propaganda of association and merging of nation. That is what we feel sure. Every sensible worker, every genuine socialist and internationalist will think of our controversy with Pikierski. Running through the article is Kieski basic doubt. Why advocate and when we are in power, implement the freedom of nation to succeed, considering that the trend of development towards I'm going to mark because this
the merging of nations.
I'm gonna get lost.
No, you're right. Go ahead.
No. I'm using the cursor so I know in which line I am, because otherwise I'm going to get lost.
Okay.
I said the dictatorship of proletariat. The entire trend of development is toward abolition and of coercive domination of one part of society over another. Dictatorship is domination of one part of society over the rest of the society. And domination, moreover, that rests directly on coercion. The dictatorship of the proletariat, the only consistently revolutionary class, is necessary to overthrow the bourgeoisie and repel its attempt at counter-revolution. The question of proletariat dictatorship is such of overriding importance that he who denies the need for such dictatorship or recognizes it only in words cannot be a member of the Socialist Democratic Party. However, it cannot be denied that in individual cases, by way of exception, for instance, in some small country after the social revolution has been accomplished in a neighboring big country, peaceful surrender of power by the bourgeoisie is possible. If it is convinced that resistance is hopeless, and if it prefers to save its skin. It is much more likely, of course, that even in small states, socialism will not be achieved without civil war.
Yep.
And for that reason, the only program of international social democracy must be recognition of civil war. Though violent is, of course, alien to our ideals, the same mutatis mutandis with the necessary alterations. What is mutatis mutandis?
It's a Latin phrase which means necessary alterations.
Okay. It's applicable to nations. We favor their merger, but now there can be no transition from forcible merger and annexation to voluntary merger without freedom of secession.
Yep.
We recognize, and quite rightly, the predominance of economic factor, but to interpret it a la Kieski is to make a caricature of Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
The trusts and banks of modern imperialism, though inevitable everywhere as part of developed capitalism, differ in concrete aspects from country to country.
Mm-hmm.
There is still a greater difference, despite homogeneity in essentials between political forms in the advanced imperialist countries, America, England, France, Germany. The same variety will manifest itself also in the path mankind will follow from the imperialism today to the socialist revolution tomorrow. All nations will arrive at socialism. This is inevitable.
But it's a typo.
But all will do so in not exactly the same way. Each will contribute something of its own to some form of democracy, to some variety of the dictatorship of the proletariat, to the varying rate of socialism transformations in the different aspects of social life. There is nothing more primitive from the viewpoint of theory, or more ridiculous from that of practice, than to paint in the name of historical materialism this aspect of the future in a monotonous gray.
I'd like to add something like a lot of U.S. American, United States people they do the same mistake with just democracy, as in, like, they don't understand that you can't have a Western style democracy everywhere because there's thousands of different things going on in each country. And they don't seem to understand the importance of just a nation having sovereignty. So that's why they're often too easy to accept American war, even though like they know that it just like involves privatizing everything. You know what I mean?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, there is a politician here that when like the right is always trying to kind of like corner more left. I mean, he's like a progressive, not a left wing, candidate, but they always try to corner everyone that is not right wing into kind of like, oh, you're in favor of the dictatorship of Venezuela or the dictatorship of Cuba, and it's like there is not a single form of democracy. Like, yes. Do I like the democracy? No, I don't. But that's how they decided democracy is shaped like. So it's like, it's not in us to decide that because their democracy doesn't look like ours, theirs is not a democracy. Because democracy is just what you say it is. It's not something that comes from nature. It's something that is abstract. So that's
a brilliant way to explain it. We should clip this part, Janet, and play this over and over every time somebody. Yeah, no, exactly what I agree. It doesn't come from nature, so you don't know what exactly. And what people don't realize is that the one thing is that with the democracies, people will be like, I don't want to be exploited by you imperialists anymore. And that's why the US will never be giving people democracy, because if you actually do, people are like, don't exploit me anymore. And so it's kind of like those two things.
It is funny. It's funny because he gave an example of the United States. It's like, so in my mind, if a country has a presidential election and one candidate wins by 3 million of the popular vote and he's not the president, that's not a democracy for me. So should we intervene in the United States because it's a dictatorship?
That's a good one. That's actually a very good one. That was from 2016, right?
Yeah, he was talking about Hillary.
Okay, yeah, it happened. That's amazing. Yeah, that was a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. So where am I? The result will be nothing more than soot salt dough. What is soot salt?
Let me figure that out. I don't know that one. I have to use Mr. Okay, it's a general. Okay, it's a generally crude botching. It's a crudely painted icon. So it came from a painting that's just like really ugly, badly painted, and Lenin refers to that as a susdal daubing, like something. So it came from like it's just like an ugly.
Right. I get the point. And even if reality were to show that prior to the first victory of the socialist proletariat, only 1 in 500 of the nations now oppressed will win emancipation and secede, that prior to the final victory of the socialist proletariat, the
ignore that part.
During all the vicissitudes of the socialist revolution, also only 1,500 of the press. This must be a typo.
I think he meant like 500.
1 in 500. 1 in 500 of the oppressed nations will succeed for a very short time. Even in that event, we would be correct, both from the theoretical and practical political standpoint, in advising the workers already now not to permit into their social democratic parties those socialists of the oppressor nations who do not recognize and do not advocate freedom of secession for all oppressed nations. For the fact is that we do not know and cannot know how many of the oppressed nations will in practice require secession in order to contribute something of their own to the different forms of democracy, the different forms of transition to socialism. And the negation of freedom of secession now is theoretically false from beginning to end, and in practice amount to servility to the chauvinists of the oppressing nations. This we know, see and feel daily.
Okay, I have one question or comment. Maybe you can talk about it. Like I'm afraid that right now people in at least in Western nations have gone the opposite. And for example, when they do the East Turkestan, like all the Balkanization attempts, they fall too easily for cries of freedom. So that's the hard thing to balance as to whether this is really an oppressed nation or this is a Western nation trying to Balkanize that nation.
But Balkanized is when you kind of like radicalize them and make them separate from the rest of what I don't remember what is Balkanized.
Yeah. It's where you take, like Yugoslavia, where you take a country and cut it up into 100 pieces and make them each into a different nation so you can exploit each one separately.
Right. Exactly the opposite of Patria Grande.
Exactly. So, yeah. Because if it's like separated, it's much easier to exploit.
Yeah, because the project of a Patria Grande was not that everybody should be an homogeneous country where everybody talks the same language. It was kind of like every culture has its place and the right to develop, but we should unite and the things that we have in common, not separate in the things that we have not in common.
Well, I think that was actually very ahead of this time because it seems like that's the only way to, because imperialism, instead of just straight up colonizing, they started putting the Janine Áñezes and the Juan Guaidos in to do the colonization for them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, but that's actually, wow, I did not realize how ahead of time both Bolivar and San Martin were. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, when we're done, I will give you a link. You understand Spanish, so you will be able to get this. There is this Argentinian historian. I don't know if you know him. He is named Felipe Piña.
No, I don't.
He's amazing. I mean, his books are amazing because he's like he makes history fun, but it's very accurate too. And he makes political analysis. He's not just telling facts. He's kind of like making a political analysis. And he has a book about Evita. He has a book about tango. But everything has a historical and political context. So it's very interesting. He also has some YouTube shows that not a YouTube show, but things that have been kind of published in YouTube that he did.
Oh, that's great.
I think you would find it interesting.
Okay. I will absolutely check that out. That would be great. I'd love it.
Okay. We emphasize, Piqueski writes in a footnote to the passage quoted above, that we fully support the demand against forcible annexation. But he makes no reply, not even by a single word, to our perfectly clear statement that this demand is tantamount to recognizing self-determination. That there can be no correct definition of the concept annexation unless it is seen in context with self-determination. Presumably, Piqueski believes that in a discussion, it is enough to present one's argument and demands without any supporting evidence.
Everyone does. Okay, we should change this to everyone on Twitter.
Right. He continues, we fully accept in their negative formulation a number of demands that tend to sharpen proletariat consciousness against imperialism. But there is absolutely no possibility of working out of corresponding positive formulations on the basis of existing system. Against war, yes, but not for a democratic peace.
Mm-hmm.
What does he mean there? I didn't.
Okay, so Kievsky thinks that you can only have like negative. It's only realistic to do negative things, but so he thinks it's utopian to say I support a democratic peace, but he's okay with saying against war. And Lenin's like wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, this one I love.
Okay. And we see that. I mean, like a lot today in politics, where like instead of being propositive, they are kind of like contrarians. So they're like, I'm going to be a good candidate because I'm going to be against such and such.
Yes.
Instead of kind of like being propositive, it says like, I'm going to be a good candidate or a good, senator or whatever, because I want to do this and this and this.
Exactly. And that's because they don't really want to do anything. So if you're against something, you don't have to, no one expects you to do some positive, right? So it lowers the expectations.
Totally. Wrong. From the first word to the last. Kievsky has read our resolution on pacifism and the peace slogan in the pamphlet Socialism and War, pages 44 to 45, and even approved it, I believe. But obviously he did not understand it. We are for a democratic peace, only we warn the workers against the deception that such peace is possible under the present bourgeois government, without a series of revolutions. As the resolution points out, we denounced as a deception of the workers the abstract advocacy of peace. This is one that does not take into account the real class nature, or specifically the imperialist nation of the present government in the belligerent countries. We definitely stated in the Social Democrat number 47 thesis that if the revolution places our party in power during the present war, it will immediately propose a democratic peace to all the warring countries.
And it did that. Like Lenin did that immediately after he took power. And the West was like, oh my God, we need to do a coup. Otherwise there will be a democratic. It's like, there's a really funny State Department. Actually, Janet has that little audio recording that we can play. But yeah, they exactly did that. And then the West tried to do a little coup and assassination. But yeah, go ahead.
As one does. Yes, yet anxious to convince himself and others that he's opposed only to self-determination and not to democracy in general, Kievsky ends up by asserting that we are not for a democratic peace. We are not for a democratic peace. Curious logic. There is no need to dwell on all the other examples he cites, and no sense in wasting space on refuting them, for they are only on the same level of naive and fallacious logic and can only make the reader smile. There is not, nor can there be, such a thing as a negative social democratic slogan that serves only to sharpen proletariat consciousness against imperialism, without at the same time offering a positive answer to the question of how social democracy will solve the problem when it assumes power. A negative slogan unconnected with a definite positive solution will not sharpen, but dull consciousness. For such a slogan is a hollow phrase, mere shouting, meaningless declamation. Kievsky does not understand the difference between negative slogans that stigmatize political evils and economic evils. The difference lies in the fact that certain economic evils are part of capitalism as such. Whatever the political superstructure, and that is impossible to eliminate, and that is why it's impossible to eliminate them economically without eliminating capitalism itself.
Like abolish the police. Okay, go ahead.
Not a single instance can be cited to disprove this. On the other hand, political evils represent a departure from democracy, which economically is fully possible on the basis of the existing system. This is capitalism. And by way of exception, is implemented under capitalism. Certain aspects in one country other aspects in another. Again, what the author fails to understand is precisely the fundamental conditions necessary for the implementation of democracy in general. The same applies to the question of divorce. The reader will recall that it was first posed by Rosa Luxemburg in a discussion on the national question. She expressed the perfectly justified opinion that if we uphold autonomy within a state for a definite region area, we must, as centralist social democrats, insist that all major national issues, and divorce legalization is one of them, should come within the jurisdiction of the central government and central parliament. This example clearly demonstrates that one cannot be a democrat and socialist without demanding full freedom of divorce now, because the lack of such freedom is additional oppression to the oppressed sex. Mm-hmm. Though it should not be difficult to realize that recognition of the freedom to leave one's husband is not an invitation of all wives to do.
Exactly. Okay. This is a great analogy.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's exactly like nowadays, like a more close one would be abortion, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, just because
we're not telling everyone that has to have an abortion. It's like
you should be able to get an abortion if you need it.
Yeah.
Or want it. Or whatever.
Or want it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Piketty objects. What would this right of divorce be like if in such cases, when the wife wants to leave the husband, she could not exercise her right? Or if it's exercised depending on the will of third parties? Or worse still, on the will of claimant's perfection? Would we advocate to the proclamation of such a right? Of course not. The objection reveals complete failure to understand the relationship between democracy in general and capitalism. The conditions, I mean, you could also relate this to, United States, states' rights.
Oh, God. Yeah. The states' rights is just like nonsense, as in like ways to be reactionary. Mm-hmm. Right. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the conditions that make it impossible for the oppressed classes to exercise their democratic rights are not the exception of the capital.
Exactly.
They are typical of the system. In most cases, the right of divorce will remain unrealizable under capitalism, for the oppressed sex is subjugated economically.
Bingo!
Right. No matter how much democracy there is under capitalism, the woman remains a domestic slave. A slave locked up in the bedroom, nursery, kitchen. The right to elect their own people's judges, officials, school teachers, children is likewise, in most cases, unrealizable under capitalism precisely because of the economical subjection of the workers and peasants. The same applies to the Democratic Republic. Our program defines it as government by the people through all social democrats, though all social democrats know perfectly well that under capitalism, even the most democratic republic, there is bound to be bribery of officials by the bourgeoisie and an alliance to stock exchange in government.
Bingo. Nothing's changed.
So current.
Yeah.
Only those who cannot think straight or have no knowledge of Marxism will conclude. There is no point in having a republic, no point in freedom of divorce, no point in democracy, no point in self-determination of nations. But Marxists know that democracy does not abolish class oppression. It only makes the class struggle more direct, wider, more open and pronounced. And that is what we need. The fuller the freedom of divorce, the clearer will women see that the source of their domestic slavery is capitalism, not lack of rights. The more democratic the system of government, the clearer will the workers see that the root of evil is capitalism, not lack of rights. The fuller nation equality, and it is not complete without freedom of secession, the clearer will the workers of the oppressed nations see that the cause of their oppression is capitalism, not lack of rights. It must be said.
Actually, this is kind of funny because way too many people in the United States think that all the cause of oppression is the lack of rights, precisely because they don't have an actual democratic system, if that makes sense.
Right, totally. And it happens here. I mean, one can bash, the United States all we want.
Well, I live in the United States. It's easier to bash.
Yeah, totally. But one can see that mostly everywhere because most of the world is capitalist. To different degrees, right? To different degrees, but still.
No, you're absolutely right. But it's obscured in different ways. So
totally.
You're absolutely right. Go ahead.
No, I make the clarification because I tend to kind of like focus, like when I talk to American friends, tend to focus that I'm trying to kind of like do some soft criticism of politics in Argentina and kind of like the status quo, which is very similar, though with some nuances and differences, but
for me, I know exactly. And for me, I think it's just that if you're living inside the belly of the beast, you don't understand all the things that the beast does. And so it's hard for them to understand imperialism. So I just kind of try to smack down what is imperialism on them.
Yeah, I think though that, I mean, if there was such a program where people get to live in different countries to see what the quality of living is, etc. Like when I moved to the United States, I was more or less libertarian, and I'm ashamed that I was. And when I lived in a country that, with difficulties or not, has a very supportive state and shortcomings. And then even though I had a good job and I was well paid and I wasn't exploited, like, I mean, let me clarify. I wasn't as exploited as other people are. I mean, we all workers are exploited.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Like, I wasn't flipping burgers. I was kind of like working with computers, which gives you a different quality of living. And when I arrived and I started seeing like kind of like a open racism, and I'm not even talking about people. It was like just ads in kind of like bus stops.
Yes.
And it's like, don't you see that? It's like that movie They Live.
Yeah.
You put on the glasses and it's like
yeah.
Everything is like it's in front of your face.
And yes, it's like punches you in the face. Yes.
And that kind of like and even you don't like him, like Chomsky helped, like reading and watching Chomsky helped me kind of like see different things that I hadn't seen before. Like I get that one has to kind of like evolve.
No, don't worry. No, yeah, I'm okay. I only say that my Chomsky thing is a little bit a long story. He's gotten like it's just the last year. I've gotten more vocal because he's been giving way too many interviews to Mehdi Hassan. But yeah, no, go ahead. You don't feel free to say
it. Okay. Yeah. But like he helped me, see different things and kind of like realize how imperialism works. Whether he has some kind of like questionable reasonings in some speeches or lectures or not, it's not the point. It's like he helped me kind of like be able to like say like, oh, that's why this is this way. And it's like,
I don't know.
And then it was kind of like I had discussions with like colleagues and friends where I had a colleague that was like, no. I agree that health should be public and fully accessible for everyone. But education, why education? If you want to study, pay yourself for study. It's like, but how? Free public education improves society.
Yeah.
It's like you get the benefit whether you get it or not.
Exactly.
So it's like it's like, it's just like, he was kind of like very progressive. He wasn't a right wing, like a libertarian or a right wing, zealot. He was kind of like, he was in our team, if you will, and it's just like, but I mean, I at the same time, I cannot blame him, because like, when you lived your entire life, I mean, I cannot discharge him of any blame, right? But at the same time, I cannot completely blame him, because it's like that analogy of like a small elephant that they put kind of like a rope.
Yeah. And then when they take
and
out
then
the
when
chain,
he grows, he doesn't know that rope cannot hold him anymore. Like,
exactly,
like that.
No, it's exactly like that. But yeah, exactly, because they don't. It's not their fault. No, usually it's because they have they're given a lot of facts, but no one connects it for them, and it's hard to connect all into a nice picture. It's like drawing a picture drawing, and it's like, do you want doctors? If you don't have public education, well, guess what? Everyone's healthcare is going to get worse. It's actually today's stream. I was like studying. I was really getting annoyed by everyone talking about how women are going to be so much worse off under the Taliban than under the warlords. And then the funny thing is that I came across, let me find this like really funny. So this is, hold on, let me, just give me 1 second. Where was it? Okay, so where was this? Oh, okay, give me 1 second, I found it. But in Afghanistan, between 1992 and there was a civil war. And the quote I came across from this journalist is that there was a Kandahar highway, which is like 150 kilometers. And every 10 kilometers, he was being stopped by like a different, found it. Okay. Okay. I'm sending it to Janet so that she can share, but this is like the libertarian hell. See, there was like a different, set up a toll route. Okay, show it. And this is kind of what happens when you don't have a government and don't have a society, is that, let me read this. For the powerful mafia of truck transporters based in Quetta and Kandahar, it was an intolerable situation for business. In 1993, I traveled the short 130 miles road from Quetta to Kandahar, and we were stopped by at least 20 different groups who had put chains across the road so that would like spike their tires, and demanded a toll for free passage. The transport mafia were trying to open up routes to smuggled goods between Quetta and Iran and the newly independent state of Turkmenistan, and found it impossible to do business. So then there was this like mini civil war between the trucker mafia and the toll road mafia. And that's kind of what was Afghanistan, like the libertarian paradise. And a lot of people don't understand, I guess, what happens when you have like a totally free market. And so it's kind of like the folly of not imagination, but just context is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Where were we? Which line? I don't remember.
I forgot.
It must be said. One only.
It must be said again and again. It's embarrassing. Yeah. Embarrassing to drive home the ABC of Marxism.
What? Sorry.
It says it must be said.
Yeah. Okay. It must be said again and again. It is embarrassing to have to drive home the ABC of Marxism. But what is one to do if he does not know it? He's nasty.
Lenin's great. But yeah, he's very mean. I love him. That's why I love him, because he's so funny and mean to people who deserve your meanness.
Have you... Do you know who Campora is?
Who?
Campora.
Campora, no. How do you spell his name?
Yeah, Campora. Okay. He was elected president before Perón returned.
Oh, okay, Jose Campora. Now I know who he is. Yeah.
He's the one who resigned, so he let kind of like have a new election and get Perón elected.
Yeah, now I remember who Campo Rise. Yeah, actually, in the interview we covered
formula Perón.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, there was a WikiLeaks cable leak that showed a report from the Argentina, the U.S. embassy, and their concerns about Cámpora. And I will send you that because it's just brilliant. He has all the points that one would want a president to get across. So I'll see if I find it and I will send it to you.
That would be great.
Amazing. Okay. He discusses divorce in much the same way as one of the secretaries of the organizing committee abroad, Semkovsky. Who was Semkovsky?
Okay, let me.
Somebody or?
Oh well, no. Okay. So in Russia, a lot of these Marxists was exiled, and so he was Semyon Semkovsky was like an exile. He was from somewhere near Belarus. And he spent 10 years in Vienna, and he was a Menshevik. So a Menshevik was like somebody who wanted to he wanted to wait until capitalism developed, like basically never to have a revolution. And so Lenin kind of showed contempt for him. Because he was like, he was one of those incremental people.
Okay.
Like Nancy Pelosi. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Semkovsky discussed it. If I remember rightly, in the Paris Golos, what is Golos?
It's a magazine. It's a magazine written by
His line of reasoning was that freedom of divorce is not, it is true, an invitation to all wives to leave their husbands. But it is provided that all other husbands are better.
Proved.
What's that?
But if it is proved.
But if it's proved that all other husbands are better than yours, madam, then it amounts to one and the same thing.
This sounds okay. I don't see any. I mean, this sounds right. I don't see the.
in taking that line of arguments, and Semkovsky forgot that crank thinking is not violating of socialist or democratic principles. If Semkovsky were to tell a woman that all other husbands were better than hers, no one would regard this as a violation of democratic principles. At most, people would say there are bound to be big cranks in a big party. But if Semkovsky were to take into his head to defend as a democratic person who opposed freedom of divorce and appeal to the courts, the police or the church to prevent his wife leaving him, we feel sure that even most of Semkovsky's colleagues on the Secretariat abroad, though they are socialists, would refuse to support him.
Yeah.
Both Semkovsky and Kesky, in their discussion of divorce, fail to understand the issue and avoid its substance, namely that under capitalism, the right of divorce, as all other democratic rights without exception, is conditional, restricted, formal, narrow, and extremely difficult of realization. Yet no self-respecting social democrat will consider anyone opposing the right of divorce a democrat, let alone a socialist. That is the crux of the matter. All democracy consists in the proclamation and realization of rights, which under capitalism are realizable. Realizable. Okay, I said it right. Only to a very small degree and only relatively. But without the proclamation of these rights, without a struggle to introduce them now, immediately, without training the masses in the spirit of the struggle, socialism is impossible.
Yep.
Having failed to understand that, Kesky bypasses the central question that belonged to his special subject, namely, how will we social democrats abolish national oppression?
Mm-hmm.
He shunts the question aside with phrases about the world being drenched in blood, etc. This has no bearing on the matter under discussion. This leaves only one single argument, the socialist revolution will solve everything. Or the argument sometimes advanced by people who share his views, self-determination is impossible under capitalism and superfluous under socialism. Let's do nothing.
Yeah.
From the theoretical standpoint, that view is nonsensical. From the practical political standpoint, it is chauvinistic.
Yep.
It fails to appreciate the significance of democracy. For socialism, it's impossible without democracy because, one, the proletariat cannot perform the socialist revolution unless it prepares for it by the struggle of democracy. Two, victorious socialism cannot consolidate its victory and bring humanity to the withering away of the state without implementing full democracy. To claim that self-determination is superfluous under socialism is therefore just nonsensical, and just as hopelessly confusing as to claim that democracy is superfluous under socialism. Self-determination is no more impossible under capitalism, and just as superfluous under socialism as democracy generally.
Yep.
The economic revolution will create the necessary prerequisites for eliminating all types of political oppression. Precisely for that reason, it is illogical and incorrect to reduce everything to the economic revolution. For the question is how to eliminate national oppression. It cannot be eliminated without an economic revolution. That is incontestable. But to limit ourselves to this is to lapse into absurd and wretched imperialist economism. We must carry our national equality, proclaim, formulate, and implement equal rights for all nations. Everyone agreed with that, say, perhaps Kievsky, but this poses a question which Kievsky avoids. It's not negation of the right to form a nation. It's not negation of a right to form a national state, negation of equality. Of course it is. Inconsistent. This is socialist. Democrats proclaim, formulate, and will implement this right, without which there is no path to complete voluntary rapprochement. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Rapprochement and merging of nations.
Yeah. Like I said, I like this piece because it talks about how imperial nations just kind of need to leave everyone alone. And I guess it kind of like, for me, it like gives people like the fundamental thing, like, okay, so you don't know what's going on in that country, but you have to support their right to do whatever they want without your government. It's kind of like, and the way we know socialism happens, it happens in the periphery first, and then it kind of trickles up to the core. So I like that, how it prepares the people in the core for understanding like imperialism, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, by the way, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and please send me the 2 links. And I've sent you the links to the article I've written about the Islas Malvinas. It's kind of, you'll realize that nothing has changed in America.
Give me a second, I think.
Yeah, if you give it to Janet, she'll give it to me.
Basically, just I'm going to post it here. Just this. This is a search for WikiLeaks, and they have cables from 1973, 1972, etc. So you search for Campora, and there are lots of interesting things from way before. Some of these are not just leaks that some hacker got. It's like declassified leaks. Sorry, declassified cables from way ago that they are not secret anymore. Okay. Thank you too. This was fun.
Well, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much. You too. Okay. Bye.
Hi. Can you hear me? So I'm back inside because the kitties are back in bed, but I'm not going to. I hope you guys can still hear me. I know what I can do. I can turn up the volume. But now I sound like an NPR host where they turn up the volume really loudly and they're so quiet and whispery. So lots of it was a great one. And I guess you guys have a lot of questions on learning languages. So Lenin actually does a piece about languages and the national question. So maybe for next week, for 2 weeks from now, because next week we're interviewing Steve Grumbine from Real Progressives. And so he'll want a hardcore econ piece. So we're going to have to do it for 2 weeks from now, where we can talk about the language question. Yes, I can put the italki. I'll tweet out the italki link for languages that Arlene asked about at the end. And yep, this is Lenin's first cock joke. He talked about somebody's wife leaving him for having a better husband. Modern monetary theory. So the best way to think of it is monetary sovereignty is, well, okay, if you're in America, your government's completely monetary sovereign and it can print money whenever it wants. Because literally, I have 10 videos of, let me see if I can upload one. 10 videos of Alan, what's his name? The guy who was in charge of the Federal Reserve that Bernie owned before. What's his name? I can't remember. Alan Greenspan. Yeah. I don't know why my mind just blanked on Alan Greenspan. But let's see. Found it. Okay. Let's see if this works.
Are U.S. Treasury bonds still safe to invest in?
Very much so. I think this is not an issue of credit rating. The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
That was funny because the guy was like, "You just gave away the quiet part. Shh, cut." And he just was like, "Yeah, don't worry about the credit rating. The U.S. can just print. Thank you so much." Oh, by the way, my sister has a dog named Luna. I'll take a picture of Luna next week. She's asleep. Yeah, Steve Grumbine is from Real Progressives, and they focus a lot on MMT in their channel. It's going to be fun. Let's see. Do we have anything else that's... Oh, yeah. Oh, apparently Jackson Hinkle has been making a video that was really funny because there was these no, she's a professor at Yale, and she's sadly pretty liberal. I've been working on her, but one day she's actually not liberal. She can be convinced in not a very. It won't take much to. She was actually on the first episode. You should check my episode out with my sister. So she's not a liberal. She's a softcore socialist, is what I'll say. She's not. She doesn't know theory like me, so she won't be able to talk about the empire or the heart of darkness or whatnot. But she has a moral core, and when the time comes, she'll be on the right side of the correct side, the morally good side of history, is what I'm saying. Her husband, on the other hand, yeah, it's basically the U.S. goes in and robs other countries of monetary sovereignty through the IMF, and so then they kind of need to. It's a lot they rob them of their monetary sovereignty through the IMF, World Bank. mostly their military, of course, because those who don't play ball get bombed. Well, I wouldn't say ACAB. Well, I'd say in the Imperial Corps, absolutely ACAB, because their entire purpose, as it was laid out openly by many thinkers, is to protect those with property from those without. And all the laws and the institutions have been structured to basically do that. So you just kind of have to get to her in a slow way. The people won, hopefully. Let's see. What about Bitcoin? What about your stamp collection? That's about what Bitcoin is. So if you enjoy it, you have a stamp collection, but don't be surprised if it just goes poof one day. Oh, no. The thing about languages is that it's just like I know it's kind of a little bit of like a pseudoscience that I'm pushing, but you're naturally meant to learn languages. So you just need to just play a video in many in that same foreign language, like even if you don't understand a word, and it'll osmosize, it'll get familiar. But it is a bit of a magic theory, and it might not be scientific, and it's just probably my opinion, but whatever. Let's see. Yeah, I agree. Children need to learn a lot of foreign languages. Yeah, that's why they're so cringe. I mean, what Chomsky, like I said, Chomsky does everything 30 years too late. He'll go on and on about why bombing Serbia was wrong now, but in 1992, he was talking about Russians with nuclear backpacks. It was so cringe. Well, I mean, the reason why the US had that is because of the World War II. And if you look at a map, you just don't need the US. The US is far away and it can be isolated. So if you're traveling on the high-speed train between China and Kazakhstan, you can totally structure the whole thing with whatever those two countries want. And China has nukes. So it's... Oh, I just said he did a really funny piece about all these hacks who were criticizing Jimmy Dore's $1 million house, but then defending Hassan Piker's $2.5 million house. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, he has a really funny segment on that, and watch it. It's what I was saying. No, I personally don't care about either person's $1 million houses, but I do care if they're misinforming people in a cringeworthy manner. Yeah, so this week's fake. Oh, then there is, oh my God. How can I forget about this? Okay, so, ooh, this is going to be awesome. Okay, I totally forgot. And, okay, where do we begin? Oh, Oh my God. Haha. Meet. Okay, he was some Saudi royal. Cringe. And then let's see. Oh my God. This week. Oh my God. Let's see. Where do we start? Oh yeah. So it looks like this week he wrote many art. Oh, okay. Wait. Oh, I know where to start. Let's start here. He called Lenin a mass murderer, which is entirely based on a mistranslation. This is from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Starving peasant does not get transformed into a kulak. The starving peasant was in. Okay, so now I wrote, we know why he was so alarmed about Lenin. Lenin would have totally nationalized his magazine for being a scab. Oh yeah, he was. And then he also worships Chomsky, and he wrote this like cringe piece on anarchy. Let's go through that. That's actually going to be really cool, really funny. Oh, this one's hilarious. Okay, I found what we want to do. Sorry, and we're going to do it. Well, Lenin did this, so we should also do it. If you guys want, share this with your friends and family and tell them that I'm trolling Nate Robinson and that they should come and watch this segment because it's fun. Okay. Power of anarchist analysis. How anti-authoritarian thinking makes the world clear by Nathan J. Robinson. Question everything. I always liked that phrase, but might have claimed to be among those who did indeed question everything. I guess except for, well, whether or not he should wear whatever he wears. But if I'm being honest, for a long time it was more like a coffee mug cliche. It didn't mean much. I actually did not question everything. Yes, so we can tell by the way you dress. At most, I questioned a thing here or two. However, I began to question more things. I don't know why he didn't start questioning I know. That's why I started laughing when he was like, the power of anarchist analysis. Maybe. This is big enough. And the world would be a better place if we spent a bit more time using an anarchist analysis. If I were him, I would have, and I kind of wanted to be a scab. I would have totally like set up a sham corporation and then kind of made that into a co-op and then injected liquidity or whatnot. Like, yeah, instead of like, because his entire reputation is based on being a socialist that's allowed to write for The Guardian. Come on. You can't be that much of a. Oh, yeah. Remember how he got fired after 5 years for criticizing Israel? And I'm like, so you stayed quiet on Israel for 5 years? Yeah. I first fell in love with anarchism when I took a college class called Red Flags Black Flags, Marxism versus Anarchism. Okay, it must have not been a very good college class because let me analyze the difference between Marxism and anarchism. Found it. Okay. So let's see. What kind of idiot looks at this? Achievements. Tankies. Ended the Holocaust, invented space travel, lifted 1 billion people out of poverty, liberated colonial nations in Africa, Asia, and Americas. Anarchist, not a bloody thing. So what kind of, seriously, what kind of college class would you take where you compare it with Marxism and you choose anarchism? I mean, seriously, lame. So let's continue. Oh yeah, Marx does a great job explaining why you need to not suck. I couldn't when I began. I couldn't when I began. Okay, this is a bad sentence structure, but whatever. Have told you anything about anarchism. To the extent I understood it, it seems kind of like a mindless rejection of all government. The class, however, introduced me to it by way of there is nothing to be debated about. Seriously, when you guys liberate the China, Vietnam, Laos, Cuba, Bolivia, Venezuela, the USSR, well, we can talk then, but there's really nothing to be debated. And it is a debate so he basically debated and looked at Marxists and said, I want to be a loser. It lasted for 2 weeks, 2 years, 3 years actually, but then they started doing things exactly like the Soviet Union, so they kind of realized that the anarchism part kind of was wrong. So yeah. Well, then you need a new state. But how exactly are you going to fight off 18 psychopathic warlords funded by the US without a state? I mean, even the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan lasted for about 14 years, being attacked on every single side. Okay. First, the existence of anarchist socialists, not for very long, instantly showed the idea of socialism as state control could not be true. Idea. In fact, economic socialism was about popular worker common control, and whether or not that was done through the means of a state was a hot source of contention. No, that was not what socialism is about. I like the anarchists the most because they asked the most penetrating and useful questions. What? Is Lenin an Asiatic shrew? I don't know. What kind of, seriously, what kind of, I mean, how do you, I don't know where he attended. You guys, somebody can Google this. Maybe. I don't know. But they warned that unless socialism has
a strong commitment to liberty as they did equality. Like, I don't think he knows what liberty is, nor is he smart enough to understand that regardless of what the socialists do, the Western press is going to always call them authoritarian. So he's kind of like one of those people where the CIA says, oh, China, USSR tortures kittens and murders puppies. And then he's like, oh, China and the USSR are not real socialists because they torture kittens and murder puppies. And then it's like, no, they don't torture kittens and murder puppies. It's that the CIA is lying. Oh yeah. Thank you. I'll try to giggle. It's hilarious. Like sometimes.
Hey everyone, I'm just gonna end the stream. I don't know what happened to her. I know that we were getting some weather. Oh, she might be back. Hold on.
Hi. What happened? Where did what happened? Sorry. I'm back. Okay. I guess it looks like you guys think I'm off. If you guys are anyone here? Okay. I'm confused. Okay. Okay, I don't know what happened, but okay. So first of all, Emma Goldman was funded by J.P. Morgan Chase. On top of that, let's look at the year she was in Russia, 1918. Oh my God, it was in the middle of a world war, and she thought Russia looked like a grotesque dystopian hellscape in the middle of a world war. Can you believe that? Middle of a world war. Oh, on top of it, had been oppressed by the Tsar for centuries, and they were in the middle of a world war. So, of course, in 1918, it looks like a hellscape, and that's why they were able to do the revolution so easily. Oh, and Emma Goldman's super racist on top of that. What was my answer? I forgot. Okay, so Nathan Robinson is the perfect demonstration that talking like a socialist without the intellectual curiosity or self-discipline to apply their understanding consistently rots of nothing but trouble. Absolutely. He says he's a socialist because he's hang out with Chomsky or whatever. He's like really like, I don't understand this. Like, how can you diss Lenin and like Chomsky, who's so exactly. His entire dumb business model for his little silly magazine is what was it? Okay. Did not lead her to be she was funded by JP Morgan Chase, and that's exactly, read Bill Haywood and how he just rips into her. Like literally every no. Actually, both things are not bad. Liberating a concentration camp is not the same thing as having a concentration camp. This is stupid. Oh, Lord. Camp. Okay. Who cares? Okay. I'm like, Zizek is creepily correct and often very funny. And you don't know if he's serious or not. So when he said back then, watch out for AOC, she will be very dangerous. I thought it was a funny joke, but then he turned out to be right. And that's his entire shtick, is where he thinks it's a funny joke, but also because he kind of grew up around Tito's Yugoslavia. Creepily correct. Exactly. That's Zizek. He has some disdain for Stalin, but I don't mind because he grew up in Yugoslavia and he's really good with all other socialism. He really owned Jordan Peterson by just being incoherent. I'm creepy? I like Samira. She's my friend. He often speaks about who cares? I can't even get bored reading this quote. That doesn't mean that there are no legitimate authorities. What? No one thinks this. This is a straw man. Okay, it's super easy to criticize bombs later, but come on. Oh God. No, sure, but you can also see them like killing everything that moves, and this is why this is stupid. I could. Yeah, I guess I could. But he's already really good at Lenin, and he's read it more than all of us, and he's a doctor, and I guess, yeah, I could. Sure, why not? His Sound of Music video is also really funny. So yeah, like I said, I don't mind. you should also understand that he's from Slovenia and there's like a lot of cultural thingies. So it's easy to misinterpret him, especially with English as it's not his first language. So yeah. You should especially reject justifications for war if they come from foreign policy think tanks. Like, especially reject that. Because by whom? Of course, in Vietnam, we all call it the U.S. aggression. I don't know why I'm calling myself we for Vietnam, but whatever. Why is an act committed by the never? Because that's not how you do manufacturing of consent, because terrorism is a euphemism for those other people. Martian visiting Earth. Okay. Like seeing a rather than I don't know. Defamiliarization. Who's Albert Kim? There won't be students 2 millennia from now because, well, yeah, we're probably better. And the mouth also, which makes them extra annoying. What questions? Who? Okay, you don't. So he kind of admits to not really believing this crap. A mouth that won't shut up is worse, especially coming out of anarchy cringe. I don't know. Yeah, why would they just... Yeah, I don't have no idea what ideology they'd subscribe to. Exactly. Yeah, it's not that useful to ask about a Martian, but it's sure as useful to ask, like, yo, what was up when those warlords were warring in Afghanistan in 1992? The kind that wants to get on TV every 4 years and claim and cry about how much he is censored. How is this? Who cares? Like, this is not even related. This should have been edited out. Why would no? Okay. Radical. Well, I'm gonna see. Democratic workplaces. Okay. She was my professor at U of M way back in the day. No. We don't accept open borders because if you are Bolivia, you definitely want to keep the US out of your bloody border. And if you're Afghanistan, you also want to get, if you're Russia, like every country wants to keep the US outside of its border. So yeah, this is like code for come in and let me privatize everything and invade your country. So no, we don't accept that at all. They're like, okay, so who cares? I mean, does it even matter? No, we don't accept. See, this is yeah, but that's not going to happen. So armies can move. Ew, okay. No, we need a military to protect us from your army. So, no, see, he has a very imperialistic first world approach. He's like, oh, I have an imperialistic army, so let's just get rid of all armies. And then you realize what happens is that you have warlords fighting each other over turfs for whatever, name it, watermelons, fruits, whatever you want. Exactly. Nuclear weapons again. The country needs it to protect itself from America. So, okay, no. There's only one country that has used a nuke, and that country is the one that needs to unilaterally disarm. So he's even like saying that it's not feasible for America to unilaterally disarm. This is not what happens. This is like the most dumb libertarian jank, like a historical take on war. Paperwork? Which one? What? Okay, that's why he sucks. Because there is something called a policeman who has something like a gun, and he makes you obey it from the barrel of a gun. That's as simple as it is. All laws come from the barrel of the gun. What? Oh, Lord. This is like my niece has better questions than this. Yeah, Fidel Castro outlawed it, but you call him authoritarian for that. Who cares about architecture? Okay, I'm sure there's some good architecture stuff that we should later. What? Okay. Who? This is, oh God. How long? Oh my God, we're only halfway through this horrible article. No, I think he kind of insulted Sam Harris, but then he even invoked him as a serious person. Okay, this really kind of sucks. So I don't think I can. Oh, and we're only through halfway. Okay, let me see if we can push on. occupied did not do crap. Okay. Yeah, anyone can tell if you visit Somaliland for your whatever. Yeah. You're not uniquely knowledgeable about anything. Like my niece, I bet you, is more knowledgeable in this. Okay, so he apparently can't Google Trotsky enough to figure out that Trotsky was it. Oh, I forgot. On this day, Trotsky was ice picked, or was it yesterday? Ice pick. Like he once got into an argument with Historically about like it's funny. So I said name one person. Let me see if I can find it. He said like, oh, like I was like name one person that Stalin unjustly killed, and then he's yes, he did. And he was like Trotsky, like I was like Trotsky was a traitor, and Ramon Mercador killed him. And then he's like, what happened to Zinoviev and Kamenev or whatever? And I said they were found guilty in a trial. And the Moscow trials have been translated into every language. Oh my God. Did you know that Walter Cronkite did a reenactment of the Moscow trials that I have that we should eventually watch together to laugh at, but not now. And he can't even read the Moscow trials, because if you read the Moscow trials, what you'll notice is that so the standard of evidence was flipped in the Soviet Union. Here in the US, a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich and it goes through the motion of the trial till the jury, and that's where the evaluation of evidence happens. But in the Soviet Union, actually, even in order to get an indictment, you have to have a huge evidentiary standard. So just reading the indictment of Vyshinsky, you know that they're guilty. Like he cites everything that you can verify, and a lot of it is their own testimony. And the fact that they were in Norway, what? So it's like very clear that all of them were pretty guilty. And on top of it, it was not Stalin who brought it up. What happened was that there were these mine workers who kept on dying somewhere in Siberia, which is about as far away from Moscow as you can get. And the mine workers created an investigation committee amongst themselves and started to investigate. And then they found out that it was a huge conspiracy with Italy and fascist Japan and Germany to undermine the Soviet Union. But he can't even question that. So, I mean, he's a CIA socialist. So he could not actually find that they were totally, like the newspaper that called Mussolini A New Hope was lying about the Soviet Union. Who? What? But he's never dissented, has he? Okay, God. How long is this piece? I can't do this. Oh, God. This is the worst thing I've ever read. Jesus Christ, it sucks. Okay. Anyways, I hope you guys feel that this was long enough this week. I know last week we had to cut it a little short because I wasn't feeling so good, but this week I'm feeling great. So, yes, if they have not liberated over 1 billion people, just don't do it. What Chomsky piece does Kyle rave over? Anyways, let's see. Do we have any other last thingies? Nate's the stupid power of anarchist analysis. Oh God, cringe. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Olympia. And yeah, well, I also have videos of Benigno Aquino, because he was killed today by the CIA too. And I swear they did it because they know that Corey. So I have a lecture, a really funny lecture that I will transcribe and put out tomorrow. So solidarity. And oh yeah, so it feels like Benigno was also CIA? I thought that was Corey who was aligned with the CIA, his wife. You sure? And I thought that's why they killed him. You're welcome. Okay, anyways, in Nino's book, I didn't. Oh, okay. Who got killed by the CIA today? I don't know. Who? Interesting. Ah. Okay, I will study this more. Clearly, I did not know that. I thought his wife was, I thought that's why he was killed, because then they did a color revolution with his wife, who was like a total dipshit. But I guess I was wrong. Interesting. Okay, so who did the color? But never mind. I don't, that's too confusing. We'll not go there. Anyways, with that, we'll try. I'm visiting my sister, so depending. Okay, so there I was. Okay, what's it? Okay, so I was not entirely wrong. We were talking about Benigno Aquino. He was killed in 1983, about 38 years ago on this day, and I thought his wife was aligned with the CIA, but he was not, and he was killed by the CIA. But it could be that he was also aligned with the CIA, and CIA didn't find him to be not such a useful person, and so he was off. And then they did a color revolution where they installed his wife, who really sucked, in the Philippines. But anyways, we love you too. Thank you so much. And we'll be back next week, and I'll try to periodically do streams, but it will be really dependent on whether my nieces are in school. Well, they don't go to school yet, whether they're in summer camp, whatever they are, or whether they're home. So it'll be, if I do streams, it'll be like during the morning when they're not around, because otherwise they'll be like, oh, you read Peppa Pig, Peppa Pig. Oh, no. It's My Little Pony and Trolls. Sorry, they're grown up now. No more Peppa. Anyways, with that, I'll just say Auf Wiedersehen.